welcome everyone, dear friends and debaters. Today we're going to have a debate about legalizing marijuana. We have the pro team and the against team. And we're going to start with summing up the points, and then team members will raise different arguments. So the pro team can start.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone here, including the moderator, and Hubert, the secretary, and our peers opposing team, and of course the audience. We're here today to discuss whether marijuana should be legalized, and we take the affirmative position. Yes, we believe it should be legalized. To be clear, we're discussing this in a general sense, and we're not advocating for its legalization in any particular area or nation. We believe that there are several reasons why marijuana should be legalized. Our team will argue that it's beneficial to the individual as well as to society as a whole. Our team will argue that it is the illegality itself that poses the majority of the risk to the individual and society, and not the substance. Our team will argue that the primary reason for maintaining its illegality is tradition, especially considering the fact that there's ample evidence to show that consumption of alcohol poses more of a risk than marijuana use. And we believe that tradition alone is not enough to justify the negative social repercussions that occur through maintaining its legality. And finally, we will argue that there is ample evidence to show that many patients can alleviate their symptoms through the use of medical marijuana, but that we also believe that medical exemptions are not enough to ensure access, nor are they enough to combat the stigma that these patients can face. Although the effects of legalization are new, early investigation suggests that these efforts have been largely successful. There was a recent investigation concluded in Colorado to test the effects of legalization, which discovered that not only did the state of Colorado generate enough revenue to cover the cost of the societal shift with care, they also generated enough revenue to be able to support the funding of other social programs, including health and education programs. And in fact, in the first month alone, through the enactment of excise and sales taxes, the state of Colorado generated $2 million. Now, we do not argue that the revenue alone justifies legalization, but we do believe that this is an important first step when it comes to handling legalization with care. And we do believe that this demonstrates that legalization can and is likely to be beneficial.
Then we have the com team.
Good morning, everybody. Our team would like to present a few counter arguments to the position that is for legalization of marijuana. Firstly, we'd like to start off by discussing the fact that the effects of ingesting or use of marijuana on mental illness is yet to be really determined, and the research has not shown decisively whether or not these marijuana use will actually exacerbate the mental illness that one person may have. Secondly, sexual harassment is closely related with the use of marijuana, and we think that if marijuana is legalized, that the association may further increase and result in more sexual harassment against women. We'd like to also discuss the fact that marijuana is not only available in its natural form, but now it's available in the shape of cookies and treats and things that look really delicious to children. And we wonder about how this will affect the common household when these treats that look exactly like candy or cookies that a child may want to ingest that are baked at, in a factory or by your own parents. What will happen when children are bringing them to school, selling them to their friends, eating them, ingesting them, and getting sick, making themselves sick? You mentioned the fact that this legalization has resulted in a lot of revenue in Colorado, and we would like to ask you what about the violent crimes that are a result of this great amount of cash flow that is being received in these marijuana selling shops? Because as we know, marijuana is all sold largely in cash because credit card companies don't wish to associate themselves with it. So what will happen to these hardworking people who are honest, who are getting guns shoved in their faces and being robbed? So thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go straight to your last point and talk about regulation. If marijuana is legalized and like it has been in the state of Colorado, and in introduction we said that The revenues for last year for the state of Colorado has been $44 million. And this year, it is on pace, according to The Guardian, according to a report by The Guardian, to take in $125 million. And if the problem is cash or credit cards, that's something that can be resolved, I think. I think in the first month of legalization there are several problems that people may encounter, but it doesn't mean that those problems cannot be addressed and resolved forward in time. The US Border Patrol has also reported that since marijuana was legalized, there is less traffic of arms and money from from the Mexican cartels, from the north to the Mexican cartels, and less traffic of pot from the Mexican cartels to the north. So the Mexican cartels are currently undergoing some sort of crisis. Poor them. I'm going to add to this also that marijuana legalization is also fighting for racial inequalities. Why? For instance, in the US, Latinos and African Americans count as 16% of normal users, of usual users, but also count as 37% of those that are convicted and face inequalities in trials. There is a stigma on these minorities, and legalizing marijuana could be the first step in also fighting the racial inequalities as well. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that interesting information. I would like to respond to it and discuss further what you actually were just speculating, because when you speculate, saying when you speculate and say I think that in the future we can resolve this problem, that's not any kind of fact. So I would like to really ask you to think about this. When somebody who's from Mexico or from America or from Italy, from Canada, anywhere, enters into an illegal situation, for example, selling drugs illegally, then they are fully aware of the legal repercussions that will happen if they're caught. So what happens when marijuana is legalized and these honest, hardworking people who are growing the marijuana, selling the marijuana, are then faced with violent crime? So they did not enter into any, They did not enter into any contract or any knowledge of that, oh yes, I'm doing something illegal, so something bad might happen to me. But this is an honest, hardworking person who just wants to make money. Perhaps they didn't have a job before, and now they do, but they have to go to work every day wondering if I'm going to get robbed at gunpoint. Because in Denver, in Colorado, I have reports that this happens over and over now. So we basically created a new violent crime that is not only susceptible to people involved in crime, but to honest, hardworking people. So I would like you to think about that.
I would like to answer to the point about Colorado.
Yeah,
because,
we have different statistics, but actually in Colorado, exactly, where after weed was legalized, crime has fallen by 50%. Another place.
I would add one more thing to your or question, or how you can reasoning that legalizing will, decrease the risk of being threatened for those people. I really didn't understand that.
No, I'm saying it's increasing the risk.
It is increasing.
Legalizing is increasing the risk.
How can you do that if it is not legalized? So it is.
Okay, if it's illegal, the people who are selling drugs are doing something illegal, they know that.
Yeah.
If marijuana is legal,
But it is regulation involved when it is legalized.
okay, but that doesn't
It is
change
not
the
like-
fact that somebody who is robbing them is doing something illegal and they're doing something
but
illegal.
those who is going to rob, they are going to rob anyway if it is legalized or
But
not
they're robbing
legalized.
an honest, hardworking person. They're not robbing somebody who's
when
doing something
it is-
illegal.
But just keep in mind, legalized coming with more control and regulation.
That's,
So
you're not
it makes
listening to what I'm
everything much
saying.
better. But anyway, back to Alex's point that the crime rate has been dropped in Colorado Bay, and it is the research that has shown that, especially the violent crime. And not only in the US, even overseas, as she mentioned also that it has good effect on crime rates in Mexico because people are smuggling less, and the police officers in the borderlines has less seizing pots and marijuana, which makes everything better and easier for them. And again, back to Denver is going to explain more about the 30% of all the crimes, especially in the US, is it's in US. It's because of the alcohol and alcohol abuse, and 1/3 of that is alcohol abuse, and why alcohol is legal.
Thank you.
Legal. Why shouldn't it be marijuana? She's going to expand it more.
It's our turn.
Yeah.
Okay, mine is not, I just want to focus more on sexual crime, sexual abuse that is with around the world. And the thing is that you focus only in Colorado and some out of this in Mexico. But I have another data about the date rape drugs. What do you know about that term?
Of course.
Yes, it's about alcohol also and other drugs, and include marijuana. And the capacity of those drugs is to lessen women's ability to recognize or to resist or attempt to resist the assault. But they don't have the ability to protect themselves in that way. And according to the Canadian Medical Association study in 2009, 21% of sexual assaults involved date rape drugs, and victims were mainly women from 24 years old. And even the Rape and Abuse Incest National Network of US of American reports that marijuana is the most commonly used chemical in crimes and sexual assault. The thing is that we have limited knowledge about marijuana and its effects or roles in sexual assaults. It appears everywhere, in bars, at home, at school, while you are camping, everywhere, but you are unsure about the place and the people that you are encountered with in the context. So how can you protect yourself in that way? You are advised to watch your drink and then stay away from untrusted people. But how can you do that? Can you protect yourself in that way and then just, okay, 15 seconds, I'm safe, and then people can do everything to me? It's unreasonable.
I would ask one question. For that numbers that you gave, I really am interested in specifically about how much, which portion of that crime rate is just related to marijuana. Because drugs as a whole, it can be really, really very big. It can include the alcohol. It would have been better that you give us exactly for that proportion, that much is for marijuana. And that would have been interesting number to know. And we don't know how big or how small is that, but which we think that is kind of small in comparison with the other drugs. Yeah.
Yes. On that remark, we do realize that the combination of marijuana and alcohol is a risk for example, car accidents. However, why is it that marijuana is considered more dangerous or more dangerous than alcohol, and why is it put in the same category as other drugs, for example, cocaine and heroin and even nicotine? Marijuana has been classified as an illegal substance for a long time, and this is the reason why people's minds are already made up of the dangers of marijuana. The fact is, though, that a recent study, because there haven't been many studies because the fact that it is illegal, of the risk of marijuana, but there has been a recent study about the death risk of different drugs, including alcohol, nicotine, cocaine, heroin, and cannabis. And cannabis is the only one of those that is classified as the low risk drug. The other ones are classified as high risk. And cannabis is even around 114 times less deadly than alcohol. I would like to make an additional remark about what Teresa said about these workers being honest, because engaging yourself in illegal activity That's not being really honest, I think.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying though. When marijuana is legal, they're doing honest work.
Yes.
But it's
It's legal.
It's kind of foggy.
It's the law.
Well, you're talking about the risk of the workers.
Yeah.
But what about the risk of the buyers?
Yeah, what about them? Indeed.
Thank you.
And what it has been
You come to-
Yeah.
So me and Nathan is going to say something against your ideas. About some people say that marijuana is healthier than alcohol because it's more natural and it's supposedly non-addictive.
Alcohol is
But the
natural
fact is-
too.
But the fact is not true because there are some inconvenient side effects that can influence your health depending on the dosage of the drugs. If it's small, then it can blur the victim's memory. But it's a large amount, it can cause death, depression, and then fasten the aging process. And for men, it can reduce testosterone, that is a hormone important for sexual life. And for women, that can make negative influences on their fertility, the fetus, and pregnancy.
And what about having a state ad stating all those things in education in schools once it is legalized? What about having people explaining to you all those risks that you may
That already
encounter?
happens.
Yeah, but
And
it
we have
happens
that
now
about
that the
alcohol
drug
across
is
the board.
legal.
Well, it depends on where you are, because in the United States, it didn't happen. All of these drugs were classified in the same way, and so there wasn't any good education about what the difference between marijuana and heroin was. And so when you grow up and you find out that they're actually quite different, and you realize that you've been lied to, now you don't necessarily know how to make great decisions when it comes to drugs.
Or alcohol. Or.
And I think generally we didn't say the drug are good, either natural or unnatural. We just talking about legalizing it. We think that, having control over that, it makes the problem better, or it makes less problem. But the drugs, all of them are bad, more or less.
Makes the problem manageable.
Yeah, exactly. You can have the control. You can see how much you have been selling, how much people are using. All of these things can be. You have mentioned on your beginning, there is no research about like mental disease because it has been so hush subject. Now when it's open up, so people can research about it, and we can know better about it.
So,
Yeah.
I think what we're not here avoiding to say is the drug is addictive. And it's true that it's not addictive for everybody, but what we are not mentioning that it's addictive, very addictive for some groups of people. And these people are genetically predisposed to be addicted to the drug. And if you're thinking about a group of people, and you might not think about it earlier, that's a big amount of people, and it accounts for 5 million people only in the US. So the studies have showed that these people, it's not their choice to smoke it and to medicate on that. It's not their choice to go and relieve the stress. It's the drug that makes them be addicted and go, and it ruins their lives. So if we want, it doesn't take here much effort to think if we legalize it, then the amount of people who are addicted and can be addicted can go up because these people will be in higher numbers all over. So if you didn't know that you were addicted and then you try it, then you are trapped in a way, since you have a nexus to it and it's more accessible than you would go and find a dealer. So you can go to the dispensary and get the drug.
Okay.
I have a remark on the addiction. It's actually proven that marijuana is the least addictive drug. Tobacco goes for 32% addicted, heroin 23%, cocaine 17%, alcohol 15%, and marijuana is 9% addictive. It's also, if you come into an addiction of marijuana, the withdrawal symptoms when you leave it, the abstinence, have very few severe symptoms. So it's easy to quit a marijuana addiction compared to alcohol and cigarettes, for example.
Or sugar.
But I think what you're not mentioning here is the long-term effects that marijuana has on the lives of people. So usually marijuana potheads are portrayed as fun-loving people who love watching movies and then having munches afterwards. But what we're not saying here is these people having their lives messed up because they can't keep their stuff together. They can't keep commitment to their loved one. They can't keep commitment to their job, to their university, and the long-term effects that marijuana causes. And we're not saying it's 1 use or 2 use. It's a yearly use.
The other team speaker.
I would like to respond first because actually some people use marijuana to cut back on drinking and smoking because it helps. It helps your lungs from sensitive pressure and it helps to go from a heavy addiction to a lighter one and then quit with marijuana because it's easier. It just can be like a psychological addiction but not physical and it's proven. And I would like to say some of medicine use of marijuana because it's a really, really important point. For now, it's like classified like Schedule 1 UK, for example, and it means that it has no medical values, but and only 6% of studies focused on medical use of marijuana, but rather to the harm. But actually, Sanjay Gupta, neurosurgeon, says that marijuana doesn't have a high potential for abuse, and there are very legitimate medical application. In fact, sometimes marijuana is the only thing that works. For example, we can say that cannabis is really, really effective on treating pain, sclerosis, HAV. It helps with glaucoma. It reverses carcinogenic effect of tobacco because it's increased urine volume. It helps really with epileptic seizures. It's really important for kids because when small kids have epilepsy and they have these seizures, each time they have seizures, their brain works worse and worse. They become not really active in their lives. It kills their brain, and marijuana really helps. Actually, it just was proven not so long ago that it stops cancer for spreading. I think it's a really, really important point for legalization of marijuana. And it helps with pain and nausea relief in chemotherapy for people who have treatment from cancer. Okay. And then I can list it long. It's a really long list of diseases where marijuana really helps. And when marijuana is not legalized, all those people cannot use marijuana for treatment. They
Thank
can go
you.
to the jail.
They could use something else that's efficient as well. And we're not really discussing legalizing medical marijuana because we think it's a completely different subject. Consider, for example, morphine that's used in hospitals. It's not legal on the market because it's pretty dangerous. And speaking of illnesses, several studies have linked marijuana use to increased risk for mental illness, including schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, and it depends on how much you use and the first time you start using it, and genetic vulnerability has shown to influence the relationship. And the strongest evidence to date concerns the link between marijuana use and psychotic disorders in those with a pre-existing genetic or other vulnerability. And it's impossible to know who has these genetic vulnerabilities, but we also know that mental illness is increasing among youths, for example, especially, or I know that's the case for Sweden. And if these people start using marijuana, that might make the problem even worse. So I think that as a government, their role is to protect the citizens, and if you don't really know how legalization of marijuana would work or how that would play out for people with mental illnesses or the vulnerabilities or what's it called? Oh, whatever. The precautionary principle should be used.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Can I just answer and then next speaker?
We start right away.
Okay, so our concluding remarks go like this. We believe that up until this point, it has been politics, and now it's time to face the facts. We think that it can turn into a profitable business in both a federal and a societal level. We believe it can decrease the crime, and it can generally be good. We ask you, since you've heard so many fuzzy, let's say, arguments and counter-arguments, to keep an open mind to familiarize yourself, to listen, to ask, and to read. And we also believe that it is better to regulate the drug, test it, formalize it, so that the people who actually choose to do that know what they're dealing with, instead of just buying something that is very questionable. And our strongest point is that it's better in any way to respect personal freedom and personal choice, be that recreational or medicinal, because we believe that people are responsible for their own fates, and it's better to be educated than misinformed. And to quote stand-up comedian Bill Hicks, if marijuana was legal, we wouldn't have brawl fights on Saturday nights. We would have Domino's trucks going up and down the roads.
Thank you.
Talking about
Summing up comments?
yes, summing up points. Talking about the economical side of the problem cannot be the only justification for legalizing marijuana, as it was very strong on our opponents, because there is also an ethical side to it, and there are more long-term effects than just a short-term gain when you sell the weed. The choice of personal freedom is very important in every country, but the addiction is not about the choice, because when you're addicted, it's not that you are making the choice, but it's the drug that makes you do the choice. When we are thinking about what to do with the legalizing marijuana or not, we should think if we want to be responsible lawmakers, and do we want, if we create policies for every citizen in the country, do we want to include everyone in the policy and to ensure that everybody's safety is under control, or we want to marginalize groups and create groups that are vulnerable and susceptible to risk? So we have to think and ask ourselves, we already have cigarettes, we already have alcohol, do you want to add more to it? And can we justify that it's only 9% and it doesn't change anything if we add weed to drinking or looking at it, during the rape? We already have a lot of things to work with, and adding another drug that can cause other unpredictable problems is simply ignorance.
Thank you. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have so much more to say.
Thank you for your arguments. So our quick summing up the debate.
No, sum up first and then I.
And then the vote. And then the vote.
Thank you, everybody. I think this debate was really interesting to follow. I saw a lot of natural flow between teams, which is very enjoyable. And was, though we didn't have any fight, but close enough. I would sum up a little. As the debate went as a natural flow, then I think I will go just talk about how not only what was talking about one team and what was one team talking about or the other, but how it went in general. So the four teams started with a general position and describing the context and described who are you talking about, and that you're talking about in general, not about a certain territory or country or city. Then you said already in the beginning that alcohol is much more dangerous drug than cannabis. Although my personal opinion is that we shouldn't compare one to another, but see it as a separate substance. Then you mentioned already that cannabis can be useful in a treatment of different illnesses. And then we moved on to another group, and you proposed that cannabis is not good enough in, or this excuse of having cannabis is legalized is not good enough for treating mental illnesses, and it's not investigated enough. You talked about sexual harassment against women, which first of all looked a bit weird for me, but then later on you explain it better. You talked about cookie streets and candies for kids. If that's a bit news for me, but yeah, you didn't evaluate it on it a bit later, so it was only it was point on in the introduction. And then you brought up this topic that was discussed later. What happens with the people who sell marijuana legally if they're being attacked? To be honest, I didn't get it like to the end. What was this about? Because I don't see any difference if it's legalized or not legalized. The attack would take place anyhow. And if it is legalized, then you can get it everywhere. So it's not such a big, how to say, lack of it, or it's not so dangerous anymore. So I think.
Am I allowed to explain what I'm talking about here, or do I have to wait?
You have to wait.
Okay.
Because
You
there's
have to
some
wait,
other
but then when the debate is open to everyone,
Okay.
then
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. So, this then we went to Colorado, and we talked about, or you talked about, is it the crime actually increased or decreased? And you had your own facts, and you had the other facts, yeah. When it comes to your team, then I had a question. How do you know if or why did the crime level increase? Maybe there were some other reasons.
Decreased.
Sorry, yeah, decreased. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
And then we went to Mexico. We talked about drug trafficking and how it has decreased. And then we talked about racial equality and rape drugs. And your team brought up this percentage of number 21, or 21% of all the rapes include rape drugs. But at the same time, it remains a bit unclear how big percentage of this drugs is cannabis. I think there are much more effective ways it's much more effective to use some drugs which are kind of more for that purpose, I guess. And will this legalizing of these drugs actually change that situation? Maybe they will still get those drugs. Now they get them illegally, but then they will just get them legally. Then we talked about low risks of death of cannabis. That was Jennifer. Who told us that the percentage or the threat of the risk of death with cannabis is much lower than the other drugs like alcohol and other substances. Then I went to another team and talked about health risks for men and women, which I actually agree with. This was a really good point. And as this discussion went on a little bit on is it good or bad? Is cannabis good or bad, or healthy or not healthy? Then Mariam brought up that we're actually talking about legalizing it, and not talking about is it good or bad, which was a good point, because legalizing doesn't mean that it means regulations. It doesn't mean that it will be accessible in Pressbyrån, for example. But I agreed with your fact, and it was very good that you brought up that there still exists a group of people who is very sensitive and get really addicted to cannabis, and they have a bigger risk of having those mental illnesses. And
you supported pretty well. Mm, yes. But then 14 talked about actually cannabis' role in healing those mental illnesses and overcoming the addictions.
I think you mixed it up. It's healing physical pain, not mental illness. Yeah. That's why I said it can
Actually, it's
treat
used
mental
for
illness.
treatment of post-traumatic disorder as well, so it's used for treatment of mental illness.
It can also treat mental illness. That's what I was saying.
And then your team talked about the government responsibility to protect the citizens, which totally makes sense. And that's probably why the politicians are so afraid of this topic, that they actually have to protect and that make a risk with people's health. And then you moved on to concluding that cannabis or legalizing cannabis can be a very profitable business and profitable also in the sense that the money can be used in education and health. It will decrease crime. It will regulate the usage, or but in general, and it is much more to safe to buy drugs which are being having investigated and being researched, and not buy something that can be dangerous or not researched before. And you responded with the argument that economical part is not the excuse or the reason for legalizing the marijuana. And talked about if a person is addicted, then he doesn't have a choice. He's just or he or she is just addicted. And we talked about alcohol, tobacco, and whether it is reasonable to add another addictive substance to people's choice or something. It would be inherent. Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you, Elena. Comments from the audience? Emma?
I just wanted to say it's really good to see everyone had so much passion, and you could really see that in how you're getting all involved. But the danger of that is that it wasn't a debate, it was a conversation. And I know that this is the first time that lots of people have done debate, so it's understandable. But just so you know, for next time, in a debate, everyone has a chance to speak once, and everyone has to speak in order. So the moment that Alex spoke before her teammate, the adjudicator would have gone, sorry, debate's over, that's it. So just to know next time, everyone has a chance to speak once, in order. Even if you've got a really great argument to counter what the other team says, what you should do is write it on a piece of paper and pass it up to the person, and then it's their choice whether they want to say it or not. But it can't go back and forth, and it can't be a conversation. So yeah, just to keep that in mind, because that's not the rules of debating. Otherwise it's a completely different format.
But I think it was from both parts, not just us.
Yeah. Exactly, but once you ask the other team a question, they have no choice but to respond, and then it sets the structure. So if you're asking the team a question, they can't say nothing and not defend themselves.
But they did the same. We were not the only one.
No, that's what I'm saying. The moment Alex opened it and spoke out a line, the debate would have been open, but then you're right, they did the same thing back, so they would have been dismissed as well, so the whole debate would have been called off.
Actually, before debate, I asked if it's possible to respond, and the answer was yes, it's possible to respond.
In turn, everyone can respond at their turn.
We were talking in turn. It was short response, and then we were talking.
No, you weren't. See, you spoke before Jennifer had a chance to speak, so not everyone can reply. If it's Jennifer's turn to speak, she's the only person in your team who can respond.
Yeah, I think also that they are 4, we are 5.
Yeah, it got confusing.
Yeah.
Especially because, remembering that one of their people had to speak twice and act as 2 people. set the tone that you could go back and forth. But in reality, Teresa was playing two different people, so she was responding as the second speaker. So yes, both teams did it, but yeah, it's just good to know for next time because otherwise the debate will be over the moment you do it.
For sure. Thank you.
Yes. You're right. You should respond to arguments. So what is important in the debate that you should keep turns, but you should not just present arguments. You should listen what another person is saying, and your response should be. You can present your argument, but at the same time you should respond to what another group is talking about. Otherwise, it will be just we have our arguments, we just present them, and we have our arguments, we present them. So you do not have this clash. So you have to listen, respond to both the same, and giving your arguments. Keeping turns is a challenge. Yes.
I think I just think it was a bit too bad that we didn't enforce the structure more because both Christy and I didn't get a chance to say our parts. The debate just ended and we didn't get a chance to say anything.
We learn.
Yeah.
This is the first time. Maybe it's going to be another
There
time.
were other flaws.
No, but like you mean to add?
No, I never said my part. I didn't do that in action.
You just present.
Yeah, but there's 6 of you and there's 4 of us. So I never got a chance to say it, neither did Christy.
Yeah, I wasn't understanding anything.
Yeah.
Now there is still debate is thrown to the public, so you can, everyone can present their arguments, non-presented arguments. Because it can influence voting. Come on, guys. Legalize not.
Yes.
Do anyone else in the audience have something to add, or should we have a vote? Okay, then we will vote. Who's for legalizing marijuana? And the ones against? Thank you. We have a winner.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'll turn on the camera.